Good afternoon, everybody. This is Lindsay, and I am going to be walking y'all through some changes today to our eligibility guidelines. I'm going to do a sound check one more time. If you can hear me, please raise your hand. Awesome. That's fantastic. Okay, you can unraise your hand now. And just as a reminder, if you are on your phone, if you would make sure it is muted so we can eliminate some background noise. We are recording this webinar today, so we will post it as well as send out a link to everyone with the documents that we discussed today. Today we're also going to talk about in detail the new income guidelines for LA4, NSECD, and the Pre K expansion grant, as well as a refresher on the procedures for determining student eligibility. And we will also discuss some updates to custody requirements as well as documentation requirements for immunization. So the first thing we're going to talk about is the piece you've all been waiting for. These are the updates to the income eligibility requirements. This came about because of the inconsistency in the early childhood definition of at-risk and the K-12 definition of economically disadvantaged. So in April of 2018, we brought to Bessie a change to Bulletin 140 that would align these two definitions and increase the income limit for pre-K programs to 200% of the federal poverty level. It's very important to note that while this change has been approved, it does not go into effect until August 20th, 2018. That's when it actually becomes rule. So any families that apply between now and August 20th must still meet the 185% cutoff to be eligible. Families who fall between 185 and 200% should not be prohibited from starting school. However, they cannot be coded under any publicly funded pre-K program, which is LA4, NSECD, or the Pre-K expansion grant, until August 20th. And as a reminder, children who have special needs or are English language learners must still meet income eligibility requirements in order to participate in publicly funded pre-K programs. The age requirement hasn't changed, but just as a reminder, as you know, the law requires that children who participate in publicly funded pre-K programs must be 4 years old by September 30th of their pre-K year. A valid birth certificate should be collected to verify their date of birth. For our purposes, we will use 2018, 2019 for all examples. So a child would need to have a birthday that falls between October 1st of 2013 and September 30th of 2014 in order to be age eligible. You should also verify that the person completing the application is the parent listed on the birth certificate. If they are not, you will need to collect documentation to substantiate either their custody or their authorization. So this can come in the form of a custody judgment, a child placement agreement from DCFS for children in foster care, or a provisional custody by mandate or military power of attorney. The provisional custody by mandate and the military power of attorney are both legal forms which will need to be appropriately notarized to be valid. If none of these are available, we have introduced a new form, which we have linked here, called the non-legal custodian's affidavit. This form does not give custody to someone, but it grants authority for someone other than the legal guardian to authorize educational services and school-related medical services for the named child. And this document, as I mentioned, is linked here, but we will also send that out to you following this webinar. During the eligibility determination process, parents must provide at least one form of income verification documentation. This could be check stubs, current food stamps, or SNAP benefit information, an official letter from your employer which indicates where they are employed, their hourly rate of pay, and the average number of hours that they work per week, a monetary determination for unemployment benefits, a statement from the Social Security Administration verifying that the child listed on the application is the recipient of SSI benefits. And if the person listed on the SSI statement is anybody else, the parent, the sibling, the grandparent, that person must also submit any other income documentation. So if they're working and they get SSI, they will also need to submit their check stub. They can also submit a placement agreement from DCFS for children in foster care. This will automatically determine them eligible. Families in a temporary living arrangement due to loss of housing or economic hardship, or homeless families, should have their homeless status verified using the process in place within each school district. Tax forms, including 1099s, W-2s, and tax returns, are allowable as proof of income only when no other documentation exists. And something to note about this is that it has to be the most recent tax year. So if you're currently working on eligibility determination, you would want to look at 2017 taxes, not any prior year before 2017. A statement of no income form must be completed by any adult household members who are claiming zero income of any kind. So this is going to be for your stay-at-home parents as well as people who just claim no income. A declaration of employment form must be completed by any adult household members who are unemployed, who are employed intermittently, self-employed, or who for whatever reason do not have tax return forms, W-2 forms, check stubs, or applicable DCFS printouts to verify their income. So while our goal was to align eligibility with Medicaid, what we ran into is that Medicaid has so many programs with varying income limits, and so while we're looking at 200%, you'll still need to verify income for families the same way that we have been. You'll have to use check stubs or other allowable types of income documentation. The department is in the process of building a computer system that can communicate with DHH to pull eligibility income information so that you can just go in and enter a child's name or a child's information, and they'll spit back out to you whether or not they're eligible. But we are still in the process of working on that. Our IT people are working on that, and we'll let you know as soon as that actually comes to fruition. But for now, you still have to continue to look at check stubs and other documentation that they provide. So these are the new income limits for pre-K programs. And as we move through the next few slides, you can refer to this chart to help you calculate the income correctly. And as I mentioned, these will go into effect August 20th. You will use these formulas in calculating income from check stubs as well as letters from employers. You should also refer to this chart as we move through the next few slides. It should be noted that using the hourly rate to determine income is the most accurate and consistent method. A couple of things to note about check stubs. And I know that most of you have seen all of this before, but like I said, we're going to have a little bit of a refresher. You must collect 2 most recent check stubs, consecutive check stubs for each parent or caregiver in the home for the current year. So if they are a 2-parent home, you must have documentation for both parents. If one parent works and one parent is a stay-at-home parent, then you would collect the income information for the working parent and a statement of no income for the non-working parent. So when you're looking at check stubs, if the pay dates should fall within 2 months from the date they are completing the application. Income verification is only based on regular or base pay. We do not include overtime, tips, extra pay for night shifts, housing allowances, commissions, etc. This is why you will see the hourly rate is the most consistent method of calculating income. Eligibility is based on gross household income. Therefore, if there are 2 or more adults contributing to the financial needs of the family, as I mentioned, all of them must provide proof of income. So we've had some questions come up about this recently. Here are a couple of scenarios that will hopefully offer some clarification. If a mom and her 2 children live with her parents, but she is working and financially supporting herself and her kids, her parents do not provide direct financial support, you would only include the mom and her children in the household size, and you would only include mom's income. However, if she lives with her parents and they do provide direct financial support, you would either have them verify how much per month they provide to her and count it as income, or you would include them in the family size and collect their income in addition to the mother's. If you have any questions about this, please feel free to email me and we can walk through them case by case. So as I've mentioned, income is most consistently and accurately calculated using the hourly rate. In addition, you must always assume that an employee works a 40-hour work week and calculate it as such. So let's look at a couple of examples. Mrs. Smith has come to you to find a pre-K program for her child. She provides a check stub showing an hourly rate of $27. You will calculate it as $27 an hour times 40 hours per week times 4.33 to get a monthly income. Mrs. Smith's monthly income is $4,676.40. She's a single mom and has only 1 child, so she's a family size of 2. And therefore, she would not be eligible. Mrs. Smith claims that she does not work 40 hours per week. In these instances, the parent will need to provide a letter from their employer indicating the number of hours they actually work. You can use this to recalculate their income. Mrs. Smith provides a letter from her employer that shows she only works 20 hours per week. You may calculate her income as $27 an hour times 20 hours per week times 4.33, which equals $2,338.20, which makes her child eligible. The next 3 slides contain some examples of check stubs that you will calculate. We'll work through them together. Our first example is Miss Sabrina, and she has a family size of 2. We can see by looking at Miss Sabrina's check stub in the yellow circle that she worked a total of 64 hours and earned $640, which tells us that her hourly rate is $10 per hour. So we would calculate Miss Sabrina's income at $10 an hour times 40 hours per week, which equals $400, times 4.33, which equals $1,732 per month. This makes Miss Sabrina's child eligible. In our next example, Mr. Rowland has a family of 6. Based on his pay periods, which are in the top yellow circle, we can see that he gets paid exactly twice a month. He gets paid on the 15th and the 31st. His wife does not work. Mr. Rowland's salary for 1 pay period is $5,208.34. If we multiply this amount by 2, since he gets paid exactly twice a month, we see that Mr. Rowland has a monthly income of $10,416.34. Mr. Rowland's family is not eligible. Mr. Ricky has a family of 5. It has already been determined that his wife makes $500 per week. By looking at his pay period in the top yellow circle, we can see that he gets paid once per week. We will first calculate his wife's monthly income by multiplying $500 times 4.33, which gives us $2,165. Mr. Ricky's monthly salary is then calculated by multiplying $807.69, which is his gross salary for 1 week, times 4.33, which equals $3,497.30. If we then add he and his wife's monthly salary amounts together, we get $5,662.30 a month. Mr. Ricky's family is not eligible. This slide is simply to show you the importance of recalculating check stubs for families who may have been previously ineligible under the old income limit. With a family of 4 and a monthly income of $3,983, Mrs. Jones was ineligible at 185%. However, if we recalculate it, she is eligible at 200%. We really strongly encourage everyone to go back and pull your ineligible families and make sure that you can recalculate their income to see if they are now eligible for programs. And as I mentioned, they cannot be coded as a publicly funded pre-K program until August 20th if they are between 185 and 200, but we don't want that to prevent them from starting school. So we definitely want to serve as many families as we can, so please make sure to go back and redetermine your ineligible family. Okay, SNAP benefits. Families who are on SNAP benefits or food stamps are categorically eligible to participate in publicly funded pre-K programs. There are a couple of different documents that can be submitted to substantiate participation in this program. The Louisiana Purchase Card is not accepted as valid proof that the family receives SNAP benefits. So please make sure that you are not simply collecting the blue and yellow Louisiana Purchase Card. The most important thing is to remember that the documentation must include the child's name as well as the effective dates of their case. The document that you see on your screen is the standard SNAP change or closure letter sent from DCFS. This letter will include an expiration date on the first page, which is seen in the red circle, and a full listing of household members on the following pages. It's important to verify not only a current open case using the expiration date, but also that the child applying for the seat is among the family members included in that case. The letter may also indicate that they have a certification period beginning on a certain date that is good through for 6 months or for 12 months. It just depends on how the letter reads. So just make sure that you're looking at that closely. The next form that can substantiate SNAP participation is the case detail report printed from CAFE. This report will include current certification dates, as you can see listed in red, as well as a list of included family members. And you can also see that it lists the month and the year, and so you want to make sure that if it has an end date of July 2000, as this one does, July 2016, that you assume that their certification is good through the last day of July. And also, families can pull this up on their phone very easily. And so if you have a family in front of you and they don't have the actual printout, just have them pull it up on their phone and screenshot it, and they can email it to you, and that is perfectly acceptable. There are some items that are still not allowable for income verification. Tax documentation should not be your go-to for income verification. We are looking for current family income. We want to see that current snapshot of that family situation. Tax forms should only be used if a family has no other documented proof of income. And in cases where tax return information is being used, you should not use previous tax years. For example, as I mentioned, 2018-2019 eligibility should be determined using 2017 tax information. Child support should not be used as a sole source of income. If the family states that it's their only source of income, they'll need to substantiate that with documentation showing that it's court-ordered and write a letter stating that no other income is received. And they can actually use the statement of no income form to document that. Medicaid documentation should not be used as the income limits vary depending on the program they're participating in. So if they show up with a letter from Medicaid or a Medicaid card, they're still going to have to provide you check stubs because unfortunately there are so many Medicaid programs and some of them are at 100% and some of them are at 300%. And so in order to make our income verification process consistent with K-12, we landed on 200%. And so they're going to have to still bring you those check stubs. Okay, so immunizations, up-to-date immunizations are required for school entry and participation in publicly funded pre-K programs. But you may choose to include the verification of these as part of your registration process when they come to your schools or center to register. Should you verify immunizations as part of your eligibility determination process, you should know what to look for. And these are also the same requirements that are to be kept on file at the school so that you're meeting the statutory documentation requirements for your immunizations. The immunizations referenced on this page are those required for school entry. Parents who choose not to vaccinate their children due to medical, religious, or philosophical reasons will need to submit the Statement of Exemption form. It is linked here for your convenience, but we will also email it out following this webinar when we send out the other documents. The form that should be submitted is generated from the LINKS website. This form should be provided to the parent by their pediatrician. You should confirm the child's name and verify that the expiration date is current, and the expiration date is there circled in red. If you need more information on LINKS, or if you feel like there's no one at your school or your center who has access to LINKS, you can visit the website listed on the slide, and it will provide you all the information that you need. So what's going to happen next is we will post this webinar on the website. We will also send out a link. Kay will be sending out an email to everyone with a link to this webinar recording, as well as updated eligibility documents such as the eligibility worksheet, the new non-legal custodian's affidavit. We will include the exemption form for immunizations, as well as the statement of no income and the declaration of income forms for your convenience. And we will also notify you when the new income limits go into effect in August. So on August 20th, Kay will send out an email that indicates it's go time for the new income limits. And all of those kids who you have determined to be eligible between 185 and 200 can then be coded under the appropriate pre-K program. So I see we have some questions in the chat box, and I'm just going to go back and start from the top. Will the deck be available so that I can print it later? The recording will be available, and if you cannot print it from the recording, just let me know and we will email out a copy of the deck. Are W-2 forms acceptable? If they are from the most recent tax year, you can use a W-2 form if they have no other type of income verification. However, if they're getting a W-2, usually that means that they have a job that provides a paycheck. So if they can give you check stubs, that would be preferable. If SSI for the parent is the only source of income, will a letter stating this fact substitute for check stubs which accompany the SSI letter? They can use the statement of no income form. If SSI is for anybody else in the household, just have them complete that statement of no income, and where it indicates how their rent and utilities are paid, they can just write SSI in the blank. So if the child has SSI, is it sufficient documentation for income eligibility? Yes. If the child who is on the application is the one who receives the SSI benefits, they will be automatically eligible. But if it's anybody else in the family or in the household, they'll need to provide additional income information. Will we be able to verify SNAP and Medicaid benefits through the DCFS website? Not at this time. Parents can log on to their SNAP account and print out a copy of that CAFE statement that I showed you. That is acceptable. There is not a way currently to log on to the DHH website to verify Medicaid. And we can't use Medicaid anyway because they don't differentiate programs. They just say Medicaid eligibility. And like I mentioned, there are so many different programs with varying eligibility limits that we still have to look at actual income information. If another child in the house has SSI, what do we need for income? Again, they can just use that statement of no income form and indicate that they receive SSI. If the certification date has expired prior to the school registration period, I'm going to assume that you're talking about SNAP certification. If their SNAP certification is current, when you are determining their eligibility, then they are eligible for the whole pre-K year. It doesn't have to still be current when they show up to actually register for school. It just has to be current and an open case when they are having their eligibility determined. Would 68 hours be considered weekly? We typically use 40 hours as weekly. No, you are correct. You calculate 40 hours per week as a typical work week. That check stub that we looked at with the 64 hours, she may have had, that may have been a 2-week pay period, but we still calculated it as 40 hours. We just used the 64 hours and the $640 to determine what her hourly rate of pay was so that we could calculate it at 40 hours a week. Please explain the coding process before and after August 20th. So for your LA4 kids, if you allow them to start school before August 20th and they fall between that 185 and 200% income limit, you cannot have them coded anywhere that shows that they're an LA4 child. If that child is at 199% of the federal poverty limit, they are not eligible for LA4 prior to August 20th. And so you can allow them to start school, but you cannot actually have them on paper as an LA4 child or in an LA4 classroom before August 20th. So you may have to code them as being funded through local funds or, you know, some other way until August 20th. But then August 20th, you can code them as LA4, and then once you submit your August report in the first week of September, you would have all of those kids listed as LA4 kids. For NSECD, it's a little bit different, and I'll have to send out some guidance, but those kids just would not actually have a start date at school until August 20th. Okay. If families who have already been accepted into the program do not qualify by the new income eligibility changes, will they still be able to attend? So I'm not sure I understand your question. If you've already determined that they're eligible and they've been accepted into the program, then they should be able to attend school, and you should receive reimbursement for them. The income limits have gone up. They haven't gone down. So you should be able to serve more families. And your families who are eligible at 185 will still be eligible now. You're just adding another level of eligibility. So you should be able to actually serve more kids. A parent has income as a substitute teacher. Is this considered irregular employment, and does the parent complete the irregular employment form? It depends. If they are a long-term substitute and they're there regularly, they could be considered a regular employee, and you could calculate them as a regular employee. But if they're there, you know, every 3 months, they could use the irregular employment form. And once they complete that form, that's all they have to do. They don't also need to submit check stubs. If a family has only one working parent, do we have to have the other parent complete the statement of no income? Yes, you do. Because for audit and monitoring purposes, we have to have documentation on every adult in the household who is included in the family size. We were told at a meeting in Baton Rouge at a collaborative that we could use a Medicaid card. So that was before we met with the K-12 folks, and we realized that Medicaid has so many different programs and that they all have different income eligibility requirements, but they all get the same card. And so if you collect a card, there's no way to tell if that family has qualified for the program that is at 100% or for the program that's at 300%. And we can't, it just makes things a lot more difficult to determine income eligibility appropriately. So for now, that's where we are, is still collecting check stubs for Medicaid. Like I said, the department is working on a system, but we're not there yet. So if you have collected a Medicaid card, you'll need to go back and ask that family for check stubs, because we cannot accept the Medicaid card. Is there a miscalculation on the slide? I'll have to go back and look. It's possible that there is a typo, but I will go back and check on it. But you should be able to go back and recalculate the check stub and determine the actual eligibility of that family. Does anybody else have any questions? Um, 8G students, I am going to contact the 8G director and just let her know that we've increased our limits, because they usually align with LA4. And so I will make sure that she knows that we're now at 200%, but that will be up to her to determine if she chooses to use 200% or not. Can y'all still hear me? Okay, good. Okay, so if you have your hand raised, I'm going to assume that it's because you have a question, and I'll start calling on you. So if you have your hand raised and you don't have a question, go ahead and lower your hand. Evangeline, Ms. Penny, do you have a question? If you are not on the phone, can you type your question into the box? Okay. St. James? Nicole, do you have a question? I'm going to wait a couple more minutes and see if anybody else has questions. If you have your questions, type them into the chat box, or if you're on the phone, feel free to go ahead and ask it on the phone. When will the PowerPoint be posted on the LDOE website? So in my office today is Leslie Doyle, who is our new guru as far as communications and technology, and she will be helping me get everything posted. What did you say, this week?
Yeah, this week.
Yeah, she said
one slide and then we can get a final.
Yep. She said we can have it posted this week. So as soon as we get it posted, we will send out the link to everybody. Right. And we will also include it in the newsletter and
the copy of the whatnot.
Right. So you'll get a copy of the deck as well as the recorded webinar. Looks like St. Tammany is typing a question. And if you have questions that are like specific to certain kids or certain families and you are just not really sure what to do with them, you can always email me and we can walk through each one case by case. The new income limits, the new income scale will be sent out after this webinar whenever Kay sends out all the new documents. You'll get a new eligibility worksheet, and that will include the new income limit. And you'll also get a cheat sheet, which will show you the income limit for each household by pay period type. Are there any other questions? Okay, so like I said, if you think of anything later, just please feel free to email me, and I will be glad to help you. If there are no other questions today, thank you all for joining, and we will get all of this information out to you as quickly as we can. Thanks. Bye-bye.